So welcome to the node.js Node API team meeting for the 23rd of September, 2023. We'll follow our standard approach of looking at things we've tagged for milestone 11. Before we do that, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to share? Okay, if not, I am pulling up the repo and I will share. Let me pull that window out. The other ones. Okay, which one is the right one? I got that. There we go. Okay. I think everybody should be able to see it now. Let's go to issues, milestones, 11. Okay, the first one is document how to check for memory leaks and add on default leak. I think we had a little bit of discussion on that last week. I think, Kevin, you were asking some questions. I don't know if there's anything new to talk about this week.
Nothing here.
No, okay. Still a good idea. We'll leave on the list. Adding the list of non-C language bindings to Node.js. This one I know, Nick, you'd started working on, but I think you mentioned you've been busy, so I'm not sure if there's any updates on that one.
No, but I want create a new page in ABI stable node repo, and in this page collect all the other bindings, and then I will provide to create a paragraph on Node core where I link this new page that we can update when some new things happen so for example, when we discover new binding, for example, for a new language, or maybe when one of them that we listed, it's not used anymore, for example. I don't know. So creating a page in this repo allow us to be more to have to update the document quickly. So this was my
yeah, I think that definitely makes sense. It's easier. It's easier. It's sort of a little.
It's easy to us to manage all the changes if we create this document in this repo instead of the Node core repo where we can only add a reference. No?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. It's a little less official, so it's easier for us to just update,
Yeah, yeah. So in this week, I will provide this to do these things. Okay.
Sounds great. The next one is better coverage of YouTube videos. I think, Nick, again, you'd volunteered to look at doing some of those.
I didn't do anything, but if anyone of you have some idea or some arguments that we can that we need to
So you're thinking like, think we could brainstorm some video ideas?
yeah. If you have some, yeah, we can use this issue and to collect all of the idea, and yeah, and in that I can start to produce this video.
I think like what we can start with, we could create a page, maybe like also like this Node ABI stable page, and have a link from node.js or on node.js where we list existing videos, because having these additional links from our official node.js documentation to some approved videos will be great. I think it's all these initial presentations from Michael talking about Node API initial videos, and also like recent year videos that Kevin did last year. I think it's all, if we can put them all together on one page, it will be one great start. And then we actually start to look onto
so yeah, we can start from what we already have, essentially.
Yes.
Okay, good idea.
I think there's almost like two really good ideas in there. One is like, you know, can we find the existing videos, build page. That page might go in ABI stable node or node add-on API. I'm thinking like ABI stable node just because it's node, it could be either C level or C++ level, right?
Yeah.
But
and,
then go ahead, sorry.
In this case, I can find videos about how to create native add-on using Node API with, for example, Rust, or for example, so in other programming language, no. So in this repo, we don't need to be, I think, we don't need to refer to C++ or C.
But then I think we'd want to, similar to what we were talking about with the other bindings, like find a place in the API docs and probably Node add-on API as well to say, and here's a link to a page with a bunch of good videos if you want to, learn that kind of. And I think in terms of the videos, like I think getting started, like just the very simplest, like hello world type one might be interesting, but that made me then think like for any one of our examples, the videos, a video of going through that example and explaining what's going on. I think the whole suggestion was some people like to learn through video versus, text or whatever. So since we've got the text versions for a bunch of things, maybe like, if somebody wants to record a video for one of those, that actually makes sense. And then I was even thinking like we could also do some videos on like, hey, if we've got like this, the effort to improve test coverage, we could do a video on things like that. So it really comes down to, I think, anything that somebody is interested in and maybe already doing some work. All sorts of different videos from content from this team could be interesting, all back to like, hey, if it's interesting you to get some more content out there, just think about what you're already doing and probably that aligns as well.
Okay.
So I just took a few notes there. I don't know if there's anything else, any other ideas people have on the top of their head they'd want to throw in there.
Yeah, if you could record it, whatever you just said, maybe just simple kind of initial hello world examples to be on these videos, maybe.
Right. For many of the examples in Node add-on examples repo, right?
I think it's a great idea, actually.
Yeah, it's just like we've got us. What would I was thinking? What would first I was thinking? What would we do? It's like, well, we got the hello world. It's like, well, hey, we got a sample, and then it's like, well, wait a second, we got a whole bunch of others. So
Okay, I think that it could be helpful explain what happened under the hood, because yeah, if you in my experience, what I found really useful was something someone that explain what really happened and behind the scene, and because you can always find on internet basic tutorial. You can follow the instruction, and but you don't know what really happened. And so sometimes it's not as I know what in specific what happened, but I prefer give some this extra information. So in the video, obviously paying attention at the to not increase the duration of the video because a lot. So otherwise this could be a problem.
the feedback I typically get from our video content teams is like, try not. It's better to have more shorter ones than one big long one. So I think you can cover all the different topics. It probably just makes sense to like break them up so that people can consume them in. I think the feedback I often get is like 5 minutes, which is really, really short. But like, maybe 5 to 10 minutes or something like that.
Okay. So if I create some content that is long more than 10 minutes, maybe I can split in this content in two videos, 2 episodes. So yeah, maybe okay.
Yeah, that's just the feedback I've gotten is like, trying to make it a little bit more bite size. Like I do a sort of meet the collaborators, and it's always been like, they're like 5 minutes would be ideal. And I'm like, okay, well, they usually end up being 8 minutes or something like that. But it seems like a reasonable length of time. You can talk about something and it's not too long for somebody. Whereas if it's an hour, that's probably a pretty big investment of people. So if they could like bite 10 minutes and then, oh, that was great, now I'll go to the next 10 minutes and so forth. That's good.
Okay, thanks for the suggestion.
Okay, well, I'm going to paste that in. If anybody else has thoughts, like we can just keep pasting in ideas there. And I think really any content that we're happy, interested to make, I think would be a good thing. And once we start to get a few of them in, then I can think other people will probably be like, hey, maybe I'll do one on this and that. Anything else we should talk on this one? I'll talk about on this one. No, I will go back towards strive for full coverage. Jack, I don't know if you have an update on this one.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to work on this last week, but I still have a couple PRs up. I know Gencast has the review one already, but yeah, I think there's one more needing review. Thank you.
Yeah, just taking a look. And so right, there's this one. Okay, so this one I think just has a few comments. Does it?
I think
Anyway,
he
so
addressed
obviously you're
them.
working on those and
Yeah, I think he addressed them because it's been approved at 12:02.
okay. Okay, so like that one is where are we? Sorry, was this one 12:02? This
Yeah,
one,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so this
for
one's ready to be landed. Yep. Okay, so that one we can go ahead and land and see if I can do that this afternoon. If nobody else beats me to it. And then I see. Okay, so this is a different one, but I know we'll get to
Yeah.
that. I'll wait to.
I guess there's still one more that we need to look at is the TSFN new one, the 1201.
Right.
So hopefully I should have some time to be able to look at this now.
Okay. Sounds good. Maybe I'll even just click if I'll request a review from you. Is that
Perfect. That
Okay.
works.
Right, thank you.
Mhm.
okay? Good stuff. Okay, so stale issues. So this one is probably going to get us to, but I'll go backwards through the list here. Just okay. I think this one needs a little bit more thought. I think we discussed a little bit last week. Did I remove the stale issue on that again? Let's just make sure. Yeah, we removed this. Oh no, we didn't. I think maybe Kevin, you were going to look at this one as well again, or
If I recall, this is one that we thought that there was going to be a fix based in core, and then that was
Yeah.
landed. But then the poster says that there's still an issue. And we talked about this last week. I think we said that there may be something that was needed inside Node add-on API in order for it to be triggered there, but I'm a little unsure about what would actually need to happen. Because if you look at that link that he posted in his last
Yep.
comment, he sort of explains like how it has to be done. So this is the call.js function, which is ran, by the thread safe function, and he has to, try catch for some errors here. And he's saying that if there is an error that isn't caught here, then it has that like abort going on. And I'm not sure how this is supposed to go into the normal node failure. Because now if you go back and at the very first comment with the
right.
how he says that there's two different ways that it can be thrown. And he's saying that the way that if there's an error that's not caught, it goes to the first way where it's this abort core dump. And it should be going to that last code block where it actually has like a call stack and everything. And my thought was all of that would be done, like handled in core. And we made some core changes. I'm not exactly sure what they were, but I would think that if there were core changes that were done, this sort of would have kind of addressed it. But now I'm not exactly sure. So
yeah, we talked about this last week that we should try to enable the uncaught exception feature by a module basis. Like say, a module can enable the flag we introduced in the core in the link. I suppose the link is posted above, so I don't remember the link. That is to say, we have to enable the feed. We have to investigate how do we enable the feature at a per module basis, so that module owners can enable that feature for their own and don't enable that feature for other modules so that other modules will not be affected by this.
Right.
Yeah,
I remember that conversation.
and application owners can still enable the feature by the command line flags, so that will apply to all modules, and application owners can verify their add-ons behave correctly. So I believe that's the next step we have discussed last week, and I believe for the action for us is to investigate how can we if this is sufficient to resolve the problem this person raised. So that's it.
Right. So I should have written this down last time, but yeah, that what I wrote down in the next steps which you just outlined is like, one, we probably need to try the reproducer with the command line flag that you've added to core and validate that fixes the problem. If it does, then we want to look at adding a runtime flag along the lines of what, like Vladimir, we've discussed on one of the other PRs, to be able to enable it without having to have the command line flag, so that like a module can opt into that behavior, which makes it easier for us to like support it through different Node API versions and let the module authors use it without having to add the command line flag, which is much harder.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so that sounds like, the first one, if anybody has time, we can try and run the reproducer, see if it fixes it. And then the feature flag, probably we'd wait to see what happens in the other PR where Vladimir was going to introduce the feature flag for the other reason. And then, once that's done, if it makes sense, we can add it's probably easy to add another feature flag to turn on that one thing. So
I can try to look at the first one, as I am the author of the command line flags.
okay. I will just put that down as a. Okay, thanks. Okay, that sounds like what we needed to discuss on that one. Let's go to 1066. This one, right, I think we did discuss that one as well. It's really about putting together, and I think we saw, sorry, Kevin, you'd actually worked on a PR for that, right?
Yes, to implement what we discussed of making the default the int8 array.
Okay, that's good. And it didn't require any changes to the tests or anything, which is a good thing.
That is correct. The one thing that was changed is before, because since the type was being on the old line 2009, since the type was being set to this unknown array type, if you were to try to get the type, so if you scroll down a little bit, and this big red block here, or like, I guess both the type and the length, it was checking that if it was the unknown type, then it would call the get type array info here. I moved that to the constructor so that both the type and the length would be fulfilled inside the constructor when creating the object.
Okay, and I think from our last discussion, we didn't think there was any way that, this would break any existing code.
Right, because the one that we modified was the default constructor. And if you use the default constructor, you didn't have a value already and you didn't have a length. So there really was nothing that you could really do with the object.
Okay, so we would, we don't think this is breaking, and it it looks like it's a fairly small change, so that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so people can take some time to review an LGTM. We can get that landed. It looks like it should be pretty straightforward. So thanks for looking into that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, right. This one.
I did not look into this
Yeah.
this week.
Okay,
Yeah.
so no update
okay.
on that one. Yeah, and then this one. Right, so this one I know, Vladimir, you'd already added at least one example. I think it was like but you were thinking of adding in a second, like a C example, which is why we left it open. Is that right?
Yeah, I have added C example. I need to add C++ example.
Okay, right. I know you added one of them, couldn't remember which, so.
Yeah, it's great to see that it was merged. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you added the C one, right?
Yes.
Okay, C++ version of the example. Let's see, base. Okay. Okay, so that is all of the ones that were there. So that's great. Tracking issues for modules reported. Don't see anything new there. 1 p.m. Okay, well, that got us there anyway. I think it just still seems like usage is sort of tracking upwards, up to 9 million downloads a month, which is a pretty good number. Don't know, that's don't, unless anybody else has any other news, we'll just move on to. Haven't looked at the debug testing for add-ons. In fact, I may have broken that. There was a change in core that made changing the process options. Actually, here I'll open GitHub. No, add-on API issue.
Yeah, the partition.
Right, this process.config is read-only now. So I removed that. That may have actually made it so that we can't run and debug at all, but it's still worth having that that open to remind us to go back and take a look. But the PI, the CI, after I did that, it seemed to be green again, so that's good. But that's there. And then, okay, so we can look at burn down the list of issues. Let's go to Node add-on API. Any particular issues people want to bring up in particular?
I have that top one there for add handle scope example. This is what we discussed last week. Just modifying the markdown to add the example from the object lifetime management, and then an additional link at the bottom for it.
Yep. That looks perfect to me. And I see Nick already approved it.
Yeah, it's okay for me.
So I think that is a doc one. It's just a doc, right? Let's just land that. Okay, any other ones people want to bring up in terms of issues or pull requests? I think we talked about most of these already. I'm looking at this one. So I'm just going to leave open, and I should maybe. Okay, CI.
Yeah, what's left for this one if you changed that code with, was it changed with 1208?
So basically I just removed it.
Okay.
So I think it's effectively broken our ability to run with debug.
Well,
So
how are you supposed to change the like how are we using this default configuration in order to know whether like where in our code uses that default configuration? And maybe there's a different way to signify to our code that it's running in debug versus release.
to be honest, I don't
Almost-
know.
One idea is to pass environment variable, and then we can read that variable from the binding zip. And in binding zip, if I will remember, we can indicate the target. If its target is debug or release, and then we can build the add-on in debug or release mode, and remove all these things from the JavaScript code. So Michael removed these from the index, but we read this variable in other files. But yeah, if we I won't remove these from all the test suite, and then do what module like bindings do, because the problem is that in JavaScript we don't know if we build a release or debug module, but we just check, okay, if a release folder exists, or and then I will find so we require the release module, or if the debug folder exists, we require the module in that folder. So in this way, we can remove all the usage of these variable, because in this other file we read, we only read the project config target underscore the default and default underscore configuration that is released by default, and this is my idea. I can try to make this update.
So just to clarify here, check for my understanding, we only use that default configuration in order to know, to determine whether to require the debug or release add-on that's built. And what you're suggesting is to check if the debug version is built, use that. Otherwise, use the release one, just based off of like the file system. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Because at the end of the story, before you start your JavaScript application or test suite, you already have you already built the add-on. And so if the add-on is in release folder, is the target was raised. Otherwise, is in the bug folder. So this is based on my experience. So maybe it's different if you use CMake.js. But yeah, because CMake built by default in another folder. But yeah, we are using Bungie, not Jeep, so it's okay. Do this for me.
We could probably like make it another parameter to the test runner.
Yeah.
Like you actually need to say, I want to run the debug version. And so if you've built for debug, you got to run the debug. You got to put that command line flag on or something. Because
Right.
it's probably the exception, right? When
because yeah, if you try to load for example from debug folder, you didn't, and you will you don't find anything, so yeah, you get an exception. So
yeah, I think
you
for
was
me,
not found error.
to me, it makes more sense to use a runtime switch instead of the file system, because I don't know, say for example, you've built both the debug and the release, and you want to test both, like one after the other. If you use file system checks, then you wouldn't be able to do that, because the file system would be in that state, you know, where both are built, and you're making some assumption as to which one to run based off of the file system. Whereas if we add a flag to the test script that can be read from, you know, the arguments, then, you know, we could just make it as simple, a different, you know, you just read it from the process args. And I think that makes more sense to me, because then you can have both built and then you just change the command that you run to test them.
that makes a lot of sense to me too, just in terms of like, otherwise I can easily see myself making changes and testing and going like, why are my changes taking effect?
But okay, I agree, and we can use a flag, and if you don't specify the flag, use the file system as fallback. So you didn't specify the any flag, or maybe we want to consider that by default we build release.
Release, yeah, I think that makes the most sense to me, is that if no flag, then default to release. Otherwise, use the debug if the flag is there. I think that just makes it a lot more simpler too.
And I think if we just print an error that says, hey, you asked for debug, but I found no debug binary, that should help people figure out what they did wrong pretty easily. And similarly, the other way, like if we default to release and you've only built debug, the error could say, hey, you've asked, by default, we're running release for you, but you don't have release binary, so maybe that's why it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, I just made a comment there. I don't see anything else new or any of these other ones that anybody thinks we should look in, discuss.
Can we take a look at that async progress worker, the third one?
Yeah.
Because the poster here gave a diff of what needs to be changed. And it was just simply adding that using async worker execute. And the poster says that doing this would break the API, but I'm not so sure. Like, why would that be a breaking change?
Right.
Because to me, it's just, you know, you're just scoping the execute function.
So it's basically just adding this using.
Yeah. And this is only in the tests, so I think it makes sense to add them.
Oh, okay, so it's here is this is the only, I guess it's breaking in the fact that if you don't have this using in your code, it's not going to work, right?
Well, this needs to be done by the implementer who's using Node add-on API, because this is the tests.
Right.
So the thing that the current situation that is breaking is if you were to use the C flag of overloaded virtual, then
Yep.
you would get a compilation error, and then you would need to put that using async worker execute in your code.
Right. So, but is
So-
this change to common Jippy basically adding it for everybody or just adding it for our tests?
I guess that would be, oh, no, I think it's just for the tests,
So
because
it's, okay,
somebody that's using Node add-on API, they have their own Node Jippy or build Jippy, you know?
that's where I could see, like, if this common.jippy is used for building other things, then yeah, I can see it's breaking, right?
Right. So maybe we should just change our tests then, just to add that using instead of modifying this here.
Yeah, I would prefer to change code to adding to suppressing warning.
Yeah.
It's definitely kind of keeping warnings on. It's always good.
Yeah. So maybe we just update our tests and the docs that also show how to use async workers. And then if somebody is using the overloaded virtual warning in their code base, then they wouldn't have an issue. Because I don't know why this person modified the test. Like, why was he modifying the Jippy file for the tests other than to try to replicate an issue he was having in his code base? If that makes sense. So maybe it's just could be solved by updating the docs and tests just to have this using for anybody that, you know, tries to copy and paste something into their code base, which
Right.
does have the overload virtual warning.
Right.
And I think that would be
Yeah.
another simple change.
Yeah, I think that's helpful for people to change our test to just have a little bit of extra code. I don't see a downside necessarily.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, this could be something that I can take over again. Another small
Okay.
little thing.
Sounds good. You were already interacting there, so we'll just assume you.
Yeah. And that's all that I really thought of discussing.
Okay, let's take a look at Node then. Okay, I don't see anything new. Is there anything that people think we should discuss?
I have I have a question. Like if we're done with all this current agenda, I have a quick question. So like a week before I've been in C++ conference, and last week this week I was actually we had fix hack and learn stuff in our group, and what I decided to do, I decided to play with a C# wrapper for Node API. One of the issues what I experienced, kind of very similar probably issue with example Kevin did recently about scoping of the variables. So technically issue what I have, say Node API returns me an API value, right? And what I don't know when this, how long this API value is valid. Yes, we do have API open scope and closed scope, but technically some of this opening scope and closing scope happens inside of a Node API. So, and then I wrap this API value inside of my C# class. I need to provide some guarantee that if how long I can use this API value, and I cannot. So what I think we're missing some kind of notification. Then some scope opened, some scope closed, and what is current scope? So I can actually attribute all these new NAPI values to certain scope, and then scope goes notifies it's gone. I can actually eliminate range of all these different NAPI values.
So I think when a method is called, so when your native code is called, any things that you create, like there's a scope for that method call. And as long as that method call is running, any API values you create will be live. If you create an additional scope, you can shorten that lifespan, right? So if you've got a big loop, I think we talked about that in the other case, you can use another scope to say, well, I don't want them to last for the entire life of the method. But if you want value, like the node value, like the values to last beyond the execution of your method, you either need to return them back to JavaScript, or you need to put them into a reference or something like that. Like there's no, like the open and close handle scopes are really meant to be, you can't leave them, like they're sort of I'm pretty sure they're nested in that you can't just create a scope and say, like, I got a scope off to the side. The scope off to the side is references. You want them, and then you're managing however long they last yourself.
There is a trick that if a variable is still valid to use, it's guaranteed by the language. Like say, if you use the Node API with C, there is no guarantee that a Node API value will be there is no way you can check if a Node API value will be valid, And if you are using Node add-on API wrapper, since it's a C++ wrapper, you cannot access a Node API value once it goes out of scope, unless you copied it. If you copied it, then it's created another variable. So if a language provides such a guarantee, then I believe we don't have any means we should create in Node API, I suppose. But if you are using languages like JavaScript, which doesn't have a concept like variable ownership, then we don't have any means to ensure scoping of variables. But I'm not sure how C# provides such concepts.
Yeah, in C#, C# is also garbage collector language, like JavaScript, like what you said. To me, like I think it's issues mostly on a kind of root level. So imagine if then I implementing a function callback, and function callback supposed to, yes, definitely whatever comes in probably will have a short-lived cycle. Whatever happens inside a function stuff, I agree. But function also need to return value. And I was naively thinking that I can use escapable scope, but does not work exactly this way, because technically there is another escapable scope, I think defined to Node API level.
Well, you can definitely, like, what you return will stay alive as long as the thing that called it uses it and keeps it alive, right?
Right.
And the escapable scope, I think. So what is, yeah, escapable scope. Just trying to remind myself.
Yeah, escapable scope is something what we use to return value from the function. Like we call it a function, and escapable scope allows you to kind of propagate one of the values to the parent scope.
Right, to one of the parent ones. So it's kind of like if you create, right, so but if you create a nested scope, it's effectively lets you do a return, right?
Right.
A return up to the next level, and then you could potentially return that thing. It keeps it alive until you finish that outer scope.
Right. Yeah, I will probably still work around it somehow, but I was thinking like, yeah, I just want to kind of generally check with you guys if you would be interested to kind of introduce such API, which would actually notify kind of Node API wrappers about scope changes. Effectively, that's what I'm looking for. So in this case, any kind of language-specific wrapper, especially like garbage collected language like Go or C# or stuff, they can simply implement something on top of this notification mechanism to better manage all those NAPI values.
So, but like you want to know when it goes out of scope?
Yes, yes.
I think if you had a reference with a finalizer, wouldn't that do, basically would tell you when it was, you know, the finalizer would run and tell you, okay, yeah, your object's no longer valid.
Yes, you're right in terms of reference would be a little bit heavy, right? Like imagine you have some kind of tight loop and you're kind of creating this a lot of NAPI values, you're doing something there, right? And currently, I feel like it's not so easy to implement some reliable mechanism to let, for example, C# to know that certain NAPI value already went out of scope and it's dangerous to use. You better clean up it as soon as possible, because what may happen, there's some kind of a pointer aliasing, right? Like, so maybe the same pointer will be reused in different scope. So if I don't have a reliable way to track all these variables which went out of scope at certain specific point of time, I risk to kind of misuse some values.
Also, NPI reference is not able to reference primitive values, you know. So if you are utilizing NPI reference, then you won't be able to represent primitive values in the binding layer, I suppose. That's another problem.
Yes, it's another problem that we have today. I'm trying to address it with this PR. Yeah, I need to make more iterations, but as we're talking about some using existing APIs, and also references they're kind of expensive if you like, right?
Yeah,
because we have
this
counting and
yeah, I believe this problem also applies to binding layers if we want to put Node API to Java or any other similar languages that have their own garbage collection. So I find this can be an interesting area to explore.
yeah, pretty much any language like Go also have, I believe, garbage collection. Or pretty much any other language, just for them, because they build language-specific wrappers around an API value, and I like an API value because it's very lightweight. But we need to have ways to invalidate them, right?
Yeah, only languages that have the similar concept like I like in the C++, like Rust, can be perfectly fit in the Node API currently, I suppose. So that's
But even Rust, how Rust knows that some pointer is not a valid pointer anymore? I guess
they also applies the variable ownership, so value ownership. So when a variable goes out of scope, it will simply destruct. And if you want to move it out of scope, then you have to copy it or just move it, which is very similar to the concept in the C++, but it has stricter constraints on the build time. So that's my intuition on the implementation of the Rust.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, if you have some code with an example. Like I don't quite understand the use case yet, so, but like maybe if you have an existing example, sharing that with us would help. At least me understand a bit better.
Okay, I'll prepare a more detailed example for the next meeting because we're already over
Sure.
time.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I wasn't saying right away, but just async or whatever, like, yeah, would be good to look at some of the code.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Well, thanks for everybody for your time. And as I mentioned, I won't be able to make it next week, but Kevin's volunteered to lead the meeting, which is great. And I'll see you all in a couple weeks. So talk to you
All
later.
right.
Yep.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.